Hi everyone, it's Jody Robinson. Welcome to Dual Process. This month, Ava Birch and I will be sharing design ideas for this circle quarter square quilt. I really love the look of this quilt. I mean, it's really a fun one because when I try to come up with a design for a quilt, I love to be able to look at the piecing and see if somehow the piecing can't help me to figure out exactly how I might quilt it. And so for this particular design, I'm going to draw it hand-guided, obviously. In real life, I probably would use a ruler for the lines and possibly even for the center design. But let's get started and you'll see how easy it is to just use the piecing that's within this quilt to create the design. And it's one design in each actual block, and we're just going to repeat that in every block to get a really cool overall effect. So you'll notice that in the circles, what I've done is marked where the center is, and you don't necessarily need all of these like spoke lines on there because you could just aim for this. I just wanted to draw them on. That way you can understand what I'm aiming for. So what we're going to do, for my first step would be that I'm going to want to stitch in the ditch between all of these blocks. So that probably would be, I'm not going to worry about the bottom one because I can do that. When I get to the end of this row, I'll just stitch it in the ditch going back. So I just want to do the space between each of these blocks. So I would probably, to do that, start down here because then I can stitch over, travel along the outside of the quilt, and then down, and then I'd tie off. And now we're ready to start the blocks. So what we're going to do, and this will repeat, like I said, in every block is going to be the same. So I'm going to start right here in the corner, and I'm going to stitch down in the ditch of that piecing. And then I do want to stitch this circle in the ditch. This is probably going to be fairly wobbly. Once I get back there, I'm going to go ahead into the center, and I'm just going to use a large continuous curve to stitch a flower. So we have these spokes here, and we have the center. So I'm just going to go out and back and do this the whole way around, and it's going to create this fun flower, and then out. So at this point, I do need to stitch this, but I can see it because it's piecing. I see where it is. So what we're going to do is we're going to echo this piecing shape right here with straight lines. And it would depend on the actual sizing as to how far apart. I would assume, like in my mind, this is probably 1/2 inch spacing. So I'm going to stitch 1/2 inch. And we're not going to worry about this ditch. We're going to pretend it's already stitched. And we're going to travel over, do 2 and 3. And we come over. Now we're to this piecing line. I'm going to go out and back. And then I'm just going to continue doing the same thing. 1 repeat, 1 echo, 2, 3, out and back. 1, 2, 3, out and back. 1, 2, 3. And then because we went out and back on all these other corners, we can now just trace back out from our initial line down in, come over to this block, and repeat that same process. So we're going to come down, stitch the circle in the ditch, come into the center with our continuous curve and create our little flower. Back to the corner here, and then add in our 3 echoes. And the reason for the 3 is that it allows you to travel. We'll come to this corner, out and back. So what I mean by that is we're going to do 1, 2 takes us back to where we started, and we need the 3 to get to the other side. Repeat that again. 1, 2, 3, out and back. 1, 2, 3, and then travel out. And then here, in this case, we're off the edge of the quilt, so we can just travel there. This last one, down in, stitch that in the ditch, our continuous curve. I really like the look of this. You know, the little flower in there just is really nice contrast to these straight lines. We have our 3 echoes. Oh boy, they're really crooked. Out and back. Continue to do that same thing. Whoops, I should have known better than to do that. Out and back. Out and back. Echoes. Out. Then because I'm at the edge, I'll go ahead and travel down here. And this is where I said, so now I can just stitch in the ditch and get this main seam the whole way back. Now, depending on how big these blocks are, I possibly, you know, if it's a smaller scale, I could just continue now right into this next row. And we're just going to repeat that for every one of the blocks. And one thing, I mean, when you look at the picture of the finished drawing of the quilt, the texture is amazing with the straight lines. And I love how, because these echoes get smaller as you go in, it really gives the illusion that that circle drops down in. So I'm going to go ahead and finish the rest of these blocks. Okay, so now as we come to the last bit of stitching here, and we're done. And I would go ahead and come out of here and tie off, just so that all of those lines are double stitched to make it cohesive. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this design, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
My name is Ava Birch. Thank you so much for being here. Today's quilt is the Circle Quarter Square quilt. And this one, you can either go traditional, but to me it looks more like a contemporary quilt. The way I look at this layout, I want to create something where there will be a secondary design here, and to really make those circles stand out. So I've selected some of the designs, and the first design is this Dream Big Kaleidoscope Center Circle, and this one was designed by Nancy Hackey. And I just wanted something pretty in those circles. So I'm simply going to place those kaleidoscope designs into my circles on the quilt. I have resized them to make them fit the way I'd like them to be. I want to have a little margin right around the outside of the circle. So once I have placed all my circle designs, I can make some minor adjustments if necessary, allowing that little margin right on the outside. And I think I like this design a lot because it creates a lot of movement, and with the pearls in there, it also looks quite elegant. So this is the first step. So the next step will be, I want to go ahead and fill the background around the circle. So I've created a circle design that I'm going to place right on the outside here of the pieced quilt. I'm going to use my nudge, alt, and arrow keys to scooch it right in place as best as I can, and that looks pretty good. Once I'm happy with the placement of my circular design, I'm going to right click and go to Echo Pattern. With the echo feature, it's important to remember that it saves the parameters from the last time you used the echo feature. In my case, because I worked on a mock-up already, mine spacing is set to 0.17 with the number of 3 echoes on the outside. And that to me looks very pleasing. It fills the space very nicely. And so I'm going to click OK. Now I can repeat that process for all of the circles, but I can also save some time. So I'm going to grab that pattern right here and convert it to a boundary. And then I'm going to do a marquee select, grabbing just the circle with the echoes. And I can save that as a pattern if I like. I can add the words with echo and save that. And once I have saved the pattern, I can then just go ahead and grab it and place it where I want it to be. That's really, up to you if you want to do the echoes individually or want to save the echoes as a pattern and proceed that way. We all have our different ways of working systematically through our mock-ups, because the idea is to figure out what works best to then relate it to the quilt itself. But I'm going to use this method to place all my circular patterns. I can also go to rubber stamp. We have so many different options with Creative Studio, and sometimes it's important to remember that in order to work as efficiently as possible. I can make some small adjustments if necessary. But of course I have to grab the right pattern and place that a little bit more centered. And I can just quickly go through those. This is just a mock-up, so it's not critical. Of course, if you're working on your actual quilt, then you have to be a lot more precise. But just taking a look at that, that looks pretty good. And I really like the way this looks. And now I'm going to decide what I'm going to do in the rest of the space. So one thing that's important to notice, if you take a look at all this, you see that I have a lot of jump stitches. And that's because these are individual echoes. So they're going to stitch out individually. But depending on how you have set your settings in your controller definitions, let's take a look at what mine are set at. So it's going to do the tie-off stitches. It's going to do those. But I have stop at jump stitch unchecked. So in other words, once one of the circles is stitched, it's going to do the jump stitch. It's going to do the tie-off stitches, and then it's automatically going to go to stitch the next echo. So you may want to take a look at that. If not, if you don't have that unchecked, then you will have to press the continue button at each one of those echoes, and it'll make things quite cumbersome. So that is definitely something to take a look at before you plan on stitching this out. So now we're going to address the open spaces. So all that remains is the background areas, and for that I have chosen the Simple Arc Point to Point by Joyce Lundgren. So with the pattern highlighted, I'm going to select the Draw Pattern feature, and I'm just going to place the first design right here, and I'm gonna try to size it so it lines right up alongside that piecing. I'm going to do the same thing in the rest of the top row. When I have done that, I can go into here and order join those. I have also saved a copy of that pattern where the two of them are combined, so I can also grab that and use that to place in those areas. Again, lots of options to accomplish one goal. You choose what works best for you. Once I've order joined and combined them, I can also, if necessary, see if I want to resize those just a bit. And that is, personal preference. One of the things, if I do choose to resize the pattern, I want to make sure that it doesn't affect the visual spacing. See how this comes into close? So I want to shrink it down just a little bit again. So that is, again, personal preference. You can resize it to your liking or leave it alone just like it is. but the overall visual, we want to make sure that it looks balanced from one side to the other. So the top part of that is now finished. At this point, I can grab this half pattern, select draw pattern, and place the pattern, making sure it lines up. And I'm going to place the pattern in the center here too. I'm going to order join this pattern here. And then I'm going to size it if necessary and make sure it's placed correctly. Again, I'm going to look again at the spacing so it all looks uniform. And then I'm going to save that pattern, and I'm just going to call it Simple Arc Hole. It's no longer point to point, but it's a hole, so I'm going to save that. And then I can rubber stamp that and put it in the remaining spots on my background here. I'm going to do the same thing with this design element, and I can just turn it around using my space bar and place it where I need it. And now we have placed all of our designs. Again, you can make some adjustments for the size if you like. That's generally personal preference, but those were the steps that you need to take in order to execute all those designs. And happy quilting! I hope you have enjoyed this episode of Dual Process. We'll see you next time.